Why did they all look at her like she didn't belong? The rain hammered the parade field as if the sky itself wanted to test her resolve. Every soldier stood tall in formation, broad backs, thick necks, sharpened eyes except her. A lean frame, calm eyes, a quiet posture that made some think uncertain, others think lost, and most think weak. But she wasn't weak. She was tired of starting over, of silent stares, of being measured by muscles instead of will. At Fort Grayman, silence was misinterpreted as fear. Her silence, in particular, made them laugh. She barely felt the cold as water seeped through her collar. The mud around her boots didn't bother her. None of it did. She had been wetter, colder, hungrier, alone in places much darker than this. But here, she was anonymous, and to them that meant unproven, unworthy. Dead weight, someone whispered behind her. The word floated, attached itself like a burr on her uniform. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't turn. People who earned respect didn't chase it, they showed it, quietly, consistently. The sergeant major stalked in front of them like a storm wrapped in skin. Croft carved by decades of dirt, deployments and disbelief in softness. His boots crushed the soaked earth with authority. His voice cracked like rifle fire. Final field exercise, 3 days in the Blackwood, hunt or be hunted. Alpha Team smirked, 6 men forged in arrogance and self-worship. They had broad shoulders and bigger egos, and they expected to win like they breathed, automatically. Reyes, the self-appointed king among them, smirked as he looked at her. That smirk wasn't cruel. Cruelty had fangs. His expression was something worse, certainty. Certainty that she didn't matter. Try not to get in the way, Croft added, his voice cutting through rain and bone. Beta Team survives, Alpha hunts, simple. He stared right at her like she was a stain on the uniform itself. Miller, Vance, stick close. And Sharma, carry the extra load. Don't slow them down. You are support only. Don't get lost. A few soft chuckles. The kind of laughter that hides insecurity inside bravado. She didn't break eye contact, didn't react. Emotions wasted energy, and energy saved lives. That's something they didn't know yet. Reyes leaned just close enough to whisper, "Try not to quit before sunrise." She only tightened the strap on her pack. Every piece of gear precisely placed. Not a jingle, not a loose buckle. Miller noticed, confusion touched his expression. He wasn't cruel, just scared. "Stick near us, we'll handle the nav," he muttered. She nodded once, no need to correct him, not yet. Because the forest was waiting, and the forest didn't care about rank or muscle. It cared about truth. And the truth was simple. In the woods, she wasn't deadweight. In the woods, she was something else entirely. But they didn't know that. Not yet. The briefing tent rattled with wind, maps flapped, radios hummed. Names, coordinates, rules, all delivered with military precision. Reyes studied terrain like a predator eyeing territory. Croft's gaze landed on her again. He spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear, for Alpha's amusement, for Beta's discomfort. "You're a liability, Sharma. Learn something before you wash out." Humiliation rolled through the air, but humiliation only hurts when you accept it. She didn't. She cataloged it, filed it, let it fuel not anger but clarity. Croft walked away. Alpha swaggered out. Rain roared again. Miller approached cautiously. "We'll take the main trail," he said, nervous but hopeful for approval. "The obvious route," she replied. "Alpha will expect that." Her voice was soft, not timid, but measured, controlled. "We go east, Ridge Trail, harder, hidden." Vance frowned. Croft said basics. "Basics get hunted first." They exchanged a look, uncertainty struggling with instincts. But survival instincts sometimes whisper, and her tone carried weight they didn't understand. They nodded. And they followed. The Blackwood swallowed them whole. Branches clawed their sleeves, roots waited for missteps, rain turned ground to soup. Breath fogged, mud clung, Miller wheezed, Vance cursed. But she moved like she belonged there, as if her body already knew the rhythm of the terrain, the language of rainfall, the secrets between wind and leaves. Nothing wasted, no sound, no hesitation. Halfway up a ridge, she lifted her fist sharply. Halt! Miller obeyed instantly. Vance didn't, not until her whisper sliced through the storm. Down now. They obeyed her tone, not the words. A sound followed, faint, unnatural, rhythmic. Not wind. Not animal. Metal. Then the forest erupted with gunfire simulators, a storm inside a storm. Miller yelped, Vance cursed. Red kill lights blinked on their vests. They were dead before they even raised rifles properly. But she was. Her body had already slammed sideways into mud and root, not retreating, diving deeper into the kill zone where eyes wouldn't expect a survivor to be. Breath slowed, pulse softened. She became forest. Not fear. Not panic. Just calculation. Instructor boots moved past her, scanning trees. Voices hushed through radio noise. 2 down, last one unaccounted. Unaccounted. She liked that word. Heavy steps paused just meters away. Her fingers brushed her blade in a block of C4, not to kill, but to create options. Options were survival. Options were power. Then silence returned, except for the storm. When footsteps drifted away, she moved, not rushing, not loud. A whisper among roots. The earth let her pass because she respected it. She wasn't running from hunters. She was choosing where to hunt from. A lone voice crackled on her radio, Croft. Cold detached. Beta team eliminated. Sharma is lone operative. All units authorized to pursue. Good luck. A lesser person would panic. She smiled quietly, barely a breath. Lone operative. Better, cleaner, more honest. People slowed you down. Silence sharpened you. The forest exhaled around her, mist gathering low, wind hissing secrets through pine needles. 3 days, one target, entire force hunting her. But the truth was simple. They weren't hunting her anymore. They were entering her territory. Later, hidden above a narrow trail, she waited. Patience wasn't a skill, it was a weapon. Most people rushed in fear or pride. She waited in stillness long enough for fog to thicken, for rain to soften to a steady whisper, for breath to disappear into cold air. Then she heard them. Alpha Team. Loud, frustrated, overconfident. Griggs, enormous and careless, stepped right into her trap, tripwire and rattling cans, primitive but perfectly placed. Metal clashed, noise erupted, panic flared. Contact. Where? Spread out. Chaos, blind reaction. She didn't fire. She disappeared deeper into mist, using their fear like a knife. The first crack in their ego appeared that moment, tiny, invisible, fatal. Rays hissed into the radio, anger laced with disbelief. She's playing with us. No. She was testing them. They failed. And she moved, not running but steering fate, guiding the story. Not chased, leading. The forest didn't hide her. The forest recognized her. Everything that mattered. Everything she once was. Everything she tried to bury. It was waking up. They called her deadweight. Soon they'd learn another truth, one they weren't ready for. Some storms do not make noise when they arrive. Some warriors do not announce themselves. Some names are whispered, not spoken. And she wasn't here to prove anything. Only to survive. Quietly. Completely. Unshakably. The hunt had just begun, and the last place anyone wanted to be was between her and silence. Sometimes the strongest people aren't loud. They're just waiting for the right moment to be heard. What did it feel like to carry a secret capable of crushing every doubt around you, yet never speak it aloud? She moved through the dripping forest like a shadow carved from patience and memory. The rain softened, trading fury for a gentle percussion against leaves and moss. The storm hadn't broken, only paused, like her. Anna Sharma, that was the name they gave her here, a clean slate, a nobody. But out there, beyond the fences and the drills and the chatter of recruits, she had been called something else. A name whispered over encrypted channels. A name that came with responsibility, danger, and the quiet loneliness of someone who saw things most never could endure. Kestrel, the Watchers, the Silent Hunters, the ghosts who never boasted because their deeds weren't stories, they were scars stitched into history where blood never dried. And Anna had walked away from that world, thinking she could choose peace over purpose. But purpose had a way of following you, sometimes disguised as contempt, sometimes wearing the face of an arrogant young soldier laughing in the rain. Purpose didn't always roar, sometimes it whispered, "You are not done." She crouched beneath an old pine, watching vapor rise from the ground like the forest was exhaling. Every raindrop felt familiar, every shadow a friend. This place reminded her of missions in remote mountain passes, wind colder than bullets, silence sharper than blades. But back then, she wasn't alone in the silence. A memory surfaced, unbidden, unwanted. A hand on her shoulder, a voice steady as steel and warm like a fire after a night patrol. "You don't fight because you're angry, Kestrel. You fight because someone must stay quiet when others can't." The ache settled in her chest, grief disguised as discipline. She exhaled slow, forcing the memory deeper. This wasn't the time. Up ahead, twigs snapped under careless feet. Voices. Men moving without fear because they were hunting someone they believed beneath them. Alpha Team. Their boots approached over uneven ground. Ray's voice carried first, tight, frustrated, like pride wrapped too tight around fear. "She thinks she's clever, fine, we flush her out." "She's one person, Ray's," Griggs muttered. "Just one girl." Ray's shot him a look sharp enough to cut bark. "Then explain why 2 instructors and 2 of our guys got tagged before breakfast." Griggs swallowed. The doubt was growing thick and slow, like fog rising from the forest floor. Doubt was a disease here. It spread quietly. Up in a pocket of brush, Anna listened to their steps, their breathing, the impatience beneath their chest plates. They thought noise equaled confidence. It equaled fear. She traced their route mentally, predictable, linear, controlled by ego, not logic. No rhythm. No awareness of wind direction or sound pockets or natural cover patterns. Predators didn't stomp, they breathed. Her fingers brushed the bark beneath her glove, grounding herself. This wasn't vengeance. This wasn't ego. It was clarity, purpose sharpened like knife steel on stone. People underestimated silence, thought it meant weakness or passiveness. Silence, in truth, was discipline. Silence was strategy. Silence was the space where intentions became action. She waited. Ray's walked directly beneath her hidden perch, one arm brushing ferns, his breath shallow with irritation. We spread out in a line, flush her toward the river. Griggs hesitated. "Ray's, what if she finds us first?" A laugh broke through Ray's frustration, brittle-edged. "Find us, she's one woman in the woods. We are 6 trained." He froze. "Correction, we're 6. Anna moved like mist. That's what mattered, not muscle, not volume, not threats. Movement without noise, thought without hesitation, action without need for acknowledgement. Ray's didn't know he spoke not to a recruit, but to someone carved by missions that never existed on paper. He didn't know that once, far across the world, her team, her real family, had gone into a valley to save lives and never come back. And she had walked out alone, carrying their memory like a blade she refused to dull. He didn't know Kestrel wasn't a code name. It was a promise. She watched him step forward, tension knotting the line of his back. He was strong, but strength without awareness was just weight. Her hand closed around a pebble. She flicked it, a tiny whisper through leaves, and it struck a tree trunk 10 meters away. Ray swung toward the sound instantly. Contact right. Weapons raised, breath spiked, focus fractured. They reacted, and reaction was death. Anna slipped down from her perch silently, boots easing onto earth without protest. 2 steps, 3, she became one with terrain. Her voice barely moved air. Behind you. Griggs spun, startled, unready, saw only a blurred silhouette and the soft glint of training pistol muzzle touching the sensor on his vest. The beep echoed quiet and final. Griggs froze, his breath caught. His pride shattered faster than his composure. Ray's eyes widened. Anger cracked open into shock. She disappeared again before he even lifted his weapon. He started, but his voice shook. He didn't finish. Predators don't announce themselves, not real ones. They regrouped, smaller now, shaken. Confidence wavered with each breath. The forest seemed louder, shadows deeper, trees closer. Corbin whispered, "This isn't normal, she's trained." Ray's hissed, "We are trained." "No," Corbin whispered, pale, scanning the fog. "We are in her world." Anna watched from above a rocky ledge, the forest holding her like an old friend. The Blackwood was not hostile. It was honest. Only arrogant men feared honest places. She remembered her first instructor's words. "When the world doubts you, let the world watch." She didn't care about proving anything. Pride was for loud soldiers who mistook volume for impact. Survival wasn't loud. Real war was quiet. Decisions made in silence echoed longest. She caught movement, not theirs. Instructors sweeping through terrain. They thought they were stalking her now too. So many hunters, so little understanding. She placed a hand against a tree, feeling its rough texture. The forest didn't judge, it evaluated, revealed truth. And truth was clear. They weren't hunting her. They were stepping into a test they didn't know existed. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the air cool her pulse, memory brushing her mind like ghosts passing through branches. Back then she had teammates, now just echoes. "You don't fight because you hate them," her mentor's voice whispered. "You fight because you protect what they don't see yet." Here, she wasn't protecting territory. She was protecting herself from becoming someone she hated, someone loud, reactive, desperate to prove rather than simply be. They called her deadweight. They had no idea they were speaking to someone whose weight was too heavy for history to carry. Anna breathed in the damp air, let it fill her chest. Then she moved again. Purpose steady. Steps soundless. Eyes calm. The exercise had rules. She would obey them, but she would also teach them something rules couldn't. They wanted to see a soldier break. She would show them one who bent the world instead. Hours later, as the fog thickened and the last light dissolved into dusk, Ray's gathered his remaining men by a shallow ravine. No jokes. No smirks. No swagger. Fear and respect share a birthplace, humility. "We regroup. No one separates," he ordered, voice lower, edges sanded by reality. No one argued. No one looked confident anymore. And deep in the mist, eyes watching, body still as a coiled hawk waiting on the wind, Anna crouched. Not triumphant. Not smug. Simply present. A soldier wasn't defined by rank, size, barked orders, or loud footsteps. A soldier was defined by their calm in chaos, their silence in ego's roar, their clarity when certainty shattered. Storms didn't always start with thunder. Sometimes they began with a woman walking alone into the woods with nothing but discipline and ghosts. And this storm had just begun to gather. True strength doesn't demand recognition. It simply cannot be ignored. Why did rain always feel heavier when people were watching? Maybe it wasn't the water. Maybe it was judgment disguised as weather, falling louder than any storm ever could. Anna stood among rows of recruits at Fort Grayman, rain soaking through her fatigues, collar cold against her neck. Every drop ran down her skin with the same message. You don't belong here. Or maybe that was the message in their eyes. Hard faces, thick wrists, loud pride, boots planted like the earth owed them support just for existing. She wasn't built like them. Smaller frame, quiet posture, calm heartbeat. Not weak, but no one here knew what strength looked like when it didn't roar. Sergeant Major Croft walked the line, his face hard enough to cut stone. He paced like a man who had seen war and believed softness killed faster than bullets. His eyes landed on her. And lingered. Final exercise, he barked. 3 days in the Blackwood, hunt or be hunted. Alpha Team, 6 men carved from testosterone and reputation, smirked. Their leader, Reyes, wore arrogance like armor, the type who measured respect by volume and veins. Beta Team survives. Alpha hunts, Croft continued. His voice found her again, not like a searchlight but like a spotlight, heavy, unwanted, accusing. And you? A beat. The pause wasn't dramatic, it was annoyed. Sharma, don't slow them down, carry extra gear. Stay with your team, no heroics, no wandering off. A few snickers. Someone muttered deadweight. She didn't flinch, didn't turn. Silence was heavier than insults, but also steadier. If she answered every doubt, she'd never move forward. Rain dripped from her eyelashes, she let it. Croft didn't look at her like she was weak. Weak people frustrated him. No, he looked at her like she was pointless. A quota. A mistake the army had to tolerate. That was worse. Reyes leaned just close enough to whisper, "If you quit early, I'll try not to laugh. No promises." She didn't answer. His need to be acknowledged was louder than the rain. She wouldn't feed it. Inside the briefing tent, maps flapped in wind. Radios hummed. Boots and breath filled small spaces with ego and nerves. Croft pointed at terrain. Alpha hunts, Beta and Charlie evade, standard MILES rules, you're hit, you're out, forests unforgiving. 3 days, move with intention or don't move at all. Reyes grinned like the rules were written for him. Maybe they were. Men like him assumed the world shaped itself around their certainty. Croft's attention cut back to her again. Stick to your teammates, don't try to be clever. That stung, not because he thought she wasn't capable, but because he assumed she thought she was. Miller, thin and anxious, gave her a look of forced encouragement. We just survive, that's our win, no pressure. Vance checked his gear, grip tight. Just don't freeze up, stay behind us. She nodded once. No fight, no ego, no argument. But she saw the map differently. The ridges weren't obstacles, they were shelter. The ravines weren't danger, they were cover. Rain wasn't misery, it was concealment. Old instinct flickered warm and cold at the same time, but she shut it down. That life was over. She wasn't that person here. Here, she was just another soldier trying not to fail. The Blackwood swallowed them whole. Fog hugged the earth. Mud clung like memory. Pines crowded overhead as if trying to protect the world from what walked beneath. Miller gasped climbing a ridge. Vance slipped twice. They moved loud, branches snapping, boots sucking mud, breath too fast to hide. She wanted to tell them to slow breathing, feel wind direction, step where earth dips not rises, but that wasn't her place. She wasn't the leader. She wasn't even trusted. She kept quiet, quiet was safe. Until she stopped. Hand up, fist tight. Miller reacted instantly, fear overriding instinct. Vance scoffed until a faint clicking rhythm cut through rain. Artificial. Wrong. She dropped low. They followed, confused but suddenly alert. Then the forest erupted. Laser bursts, shouts, alarms, simulated fire cutting through foliage. Instructors not alpha ambush. Miller's vest lit up red, Vance too. They fell into simulated death before raising rifles. But Anna didn't make a sound. She slid sideways into mud, tucked behind fallen wood, heartbeat slow, breath quiet. She didn't fight back, not yet. Fighting wasn't always surviving. Sometimes surviving meant not being seen. Voices approached, heavy steps, real soldiers hunting fake ones with very real pride. "She's still here somewhere," one instructor muttered. But they passed, because she vanished without running. No panic, no rush. Move when unseen, breathe when silence returns. When the forest calmed, she corrected her posture, wiped mud from eyes and breathed again. Her teammates dead. Exercise rules now made her one thing. Lone survivor. A cold truth. People were unpredictable. Alone, the world made more sense. Her radio crackled, Croft's voice. Flat, unbothered, almost amused. Beta 1 and 2 eliminated. Beta 3 now designated lone evader. Good luck. Good luck. Not Godspeed. Not make it out. Luck, like survival, was a slot machine. She didn't need luck. She needed quiet, she needed time. And the forest would give her both. If she asked gently. Hours bled into the woods, fog thickened, rain became mist. Then voices louder, clumsier than the instructors. Alpha team. Arrogance didn't hide in the woods. It stumbled through them, tripping roots and pride alike. Griggs cursed. Chan fiddled with a radio that wasn't cooperating. Rays whispered orders like the trees owed him obedience. They didn't see her lying under a rotted log, breath shallow, camo blending with shadow. They passed feet from her face, thinking they owned the terrain. When Griggs tripped her simple noise trap, they panicked louder than the forest itself. Chaos. Confusion. Fear disguised as aggression. Rays barked commands that sounded less like strategy and more like desperation pretending to lead. She didn't strike. Not yet. A younger version of herself might have. Back then, action felt like purpose. Now she knew patience was sharper than knives. Instead, she watched. Listened. Learned their rhythm and weaknesses. She wasn't hunting. She was understanding. Predators weren't dangerous because they attacked. They were dangerous because they waited. Night crept in. Wet bark glistened in fading light. Wind changed direction. She tasted it without thinking, an old habit she pretended she didn't own. Miller once asked her during chow, "Why do you stay quiet all the time?" Because quiet kept you alive. Because words were heavy and trust cost blood. Because somewhere, sometime, silence had been the difference between breathing and becoming a folded flag in someone's hands. But she never answered him. Silence protected others too, sometimes from the truth. What truth? She didn't know anymore. Or she pretended she didn't. Her chest tightened sharp, fast, a memory trying to surface. Boots, snow, screams swallowed by wind, a hand slipping out of hers. She shut it down. Not here. Not now. Here she was just a recruit surviving a drill. Just a girl who didn't quit. Just someone trying not to remember what she once promised never to forget. And that was almost enough. Almost. She tucked herself against a root system, eyes open to darkness, and waited for morning. The world didn't need to know who she had been. She didn't want to know either. Sometimes the hardest thing wasn't proving them wrong. It was convincing yourself you weren't what you used to be. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hides, because remembering hurts more than being doubted. How long could someone carry a secret before it started carrying them instead? By the third night, silence wasn't just a choice, it was survival. The forest slept in wet breaths and cold wind. Every leaf glistened with moon-wet silver. Every shadow clung to earth like memory refusing to lift. Anna crouched under cedar branches, her body steady, heartbeat calm, too calm for someone supposedly just lucky to still be alive. The others would chalk it up to adrenaline, or naivety, or maybe even fear freezing her still. But stillness wasn't fear. Stillness was discipline. And discipline was instinct. Instinct learned in places you don't mention in barracks conversation or training halls. Places that don't appear on maps, where names don't matter because silence and purpose erase identity long before bullets do. Her fingers brushed the soil, cold, damp. She listened. Wind. Branches shifting. A distant river. Breath not hers, heavy, burdened by pride and fatigue. Alpha team again, smaller now. Their noise louder, not in volume but in desperation. What the hell is she? Ray's hissed to his last man, breath frosting in night air. No recruit moves like that. The other man, Jax, wiped rain from his brow. Maybe she's just lucky. The way his voice wavered said he didn't believe it. Ray's dragged a hand across his jaw, anger wrapped tight around fear. She's not special, she can't be. There it was, the fracture. Pride didn't just break, it crumbled grain by grain. They didn't know she listened. They didn't know every panic-laced breath gave her strength back, not ego, but clarity. She didn't want to be proud. She wanted to be unnoticed. Peace was anonymity. Peace was being no one. But peace never lasted for people like her. They camped badly, loud tarps, exposed angles, back-facing possible approach routes. Rookie mistakes. She shouldn't notice, shouldn't care. But habits held harder than fear. She moved in the dark like she'd rehearsed this dance her whole life. Cold breeze brushed her cheek. Pine needles cushioned each footfall. She got close, close enough to hear Ray's mumbling into the dark. She's just a recruit, just a recruit. Jack swallowed, so why are we scared? Ray's didn't answer. Anna closed her eyes. Why did fear always follow those who didn't want to be looked at? Her mind dipped not willingly into a memory. Cold stone walls, distant gunfire muffled by mountain air, a hand gripping hers, blood warm, voice rough with finality. Kestrel, go. She flinched, almost imperceptibly, breath catching like thread snagged on nail. No. Not here. That name didn't exist now. Those lives didn't exist now. She promised herself that when she walked away, she buried it all. But memories don't die just because you change your uniform. Sometimes they wait with claws. She backed away before they noticed. Before instinct turned into reaction. Before the part of her she fought hardest to bury opened its eyes completely. She climbed a slope, breathing cold mountain air that reminded her too much of another mountain, another night, another hunt that wasn't training but survival in the rawest sense. She sat finally on damp ground, head leaned against stone, moonlight cut through fog, pale and quiet. Miller's voice echoed in her memory suddenly, uninvited. Why don't you ever talk about yourself? Because the parts worth telling were the parts nobody should hear. Because some truths weren't stories, they were wounds with no sutures. Because once out there she was Anna. She was function, precision, silence with intent. Kestrel. The name whispered in her skull again. A blade sliding from its sheath. She pressed fingers to her temple. Stop. But the mind doesn't obey commands like drill sergeants do. It follows ghosts. A twig snapped. Anna's body reacted before her thoughts did, hand flying to knife, shoulders low, eyes sharp. Silent. Controlled. Ready. Emotion off. Instinct on. Footsteps. But gentle. Someone else, not Alpha. Someone less sure, less aggressive, and surprisingly careful. Miller. He stepped through brush, face pale from cold or fear or both. When he saw her, he exhaled like he'd stumbled onto a safe place, instead of a quiet storm trying desperately not to become a hurricane again. "You're alive," he blurted. Relief cracked through his voice. She blinked. "You shouldn't be here." "Yeah," he panted. "Well, I wasn't exactly thrilled about lying in the mud waiting to be found." He sat beside her, rubbing his arms. How did you do it? Survive this long?" She looked forward. Not answering was easier than lying. Miller laughed nervously. "You know they said you'd fold, quit. But then, every time I think you're done, you just—" He gestured vaguely. "Keep going like it's easy." "It isn't," she said quietly. He looked sideways at her. There was no mockery. Just honest curiosity. And something else, respect born not from awe, but confusion turning into admiration. "You ever feel like," he started, then fumbled, "like you're pretending to be someone smaller than you are?" Her breath caught. He had no idea. And yet he was closer to truth than anyone here had come. "I feel like people only see what they want to see," she replied softly. Miller nodded slowly. "Yeah, I get that." Silence settled again, heavier but shared now. He didn't know it, but in that moment she felt more seen than she had in years. Not for skill, not for whispers, not for shadows trailing her name. Just seen. It was terrifying. A flare burst in distant sky, exercise signal. The moment broke. Reality snapped back. Miller stood. "I should go, they'll track me." She nodded. He hesitated, then quietly, "Anna, whatever they think you are, I don't think they're right." Something inside her tightened, a knot old and scarred. "Rest," he added, "but don't disappear." He meant it literally. She heard it deeper. When he left, silence returned. But now silence wasn't peace, it was pressure. Old instincts rising. Old training whispering. "You cannot outrun what you are." She pressed her palms to her eyes. She came here to forget. To be small. To be ordinary. But the forest didn't let her hide. Alpha didn't let her hide. Memory didn't let her hide. And tomorrow, when Rays came again, frustrated, trembling between pride and dread, she knew what would happen. Not because she wanted it, but because she could feel her old self waking like a soldier, answering a call no one can ignore. Not a recruit. Not deadweight. Something else. Something she didn't ask to become. Something she feared as much as they would. The truth wasn't coming. The truth was rising. And once it surfaced, there would be no going back. Some warriors don't seek glory. They just run out of places to hide from who they are. How far can someone run from their past before they circle right back into it? Morning broke slow, like the sky didn't want to open its eyes. Fog clung stubborn, refusing to let light clean what the night left behind. Anna walked with careful steps, exhaustion hugging her bones. She'd slept little not from danger, but from memory gnawing at the edges of sleep. The forest wasn't hunting her. The past was. Leaves crushed softly under her boots, not sloppy, not hurried, just aware. Too aware movement that didn't belong to recruits still learning survival, still fighting themselves. Her breath stayed steady, but something inside wasn't steady at all. She wasn't supposed to feel like this again. Alert in a way that burned. Awake in a way that hurt. Used to be, awareness meant life. A heartbeat too slow meant you didn't get another. But here she wasn't supposed to be that person. She was Anna Sharma now. Not who she'd been before. Yet the forest did something to her. It knew her better than people did. It stripped noise and left only truth behind. And the truth was shaking loose. A twig snapped far right, controlled weight, measured step. Raise. He was close again. He wasn't hunting now. He was chasing ghosts he didn't believe in a week ago. His ego had cracked so deeply he couldn't stop picking at the fracture. You think I'm scared of her? He'd barked last evening when Jax's voice trembled. Now, listening to the tremor in his breathing as he stalked the brush, she wondered who he was really convincing, Jax or himself. She crouched behind a fallen log. Not hiding. Resting, studying. The way he moved now, no swagger. No sound except breath and occasional slip. He wasn't the same man who laughed at her day one. Confidence peeled away one mistake at a time. And as she watched him, something old shifted in her chest, not triumph, not spite. Sadness. People break in different directions when their certainty dies. Some crumble. Some harden. Some try to outrun the crack until it splits them open from inside. Rays was packing the edge of himself, trying to choose which. Jax followed behind, hands shaking slightly, weapon held too tight. Fear had matured into caution and improvement, but also a confession. Rays, Jax whispered, what if she's trained? A beat of silence. Rays's jaw clenched, everyone's trained. Not like that. Rays turned sharply, not rage, but fear wearing rage's mask. She's nobody. Her breath tightened. That word, nobody, used to be safety. Now it felt like accusation. No one here knew who she had been, or how hard she fought not to be her anymore. She slipped away again. Not far, just enough to let them feel alone. Patience shaped her steps. But her thoughts, they weren't quiet anymore. She tried to focus on breathing, on moss smell, on pine resin and earth. Still, the memory crept in like an ambush she'd sensed too late. It started with the cold. Not forest cold. Mountain cold, higher altitude, thinner air. A different night. A different mission. A different her. Snow crunching under boots. Moonlight bouncing off white slopes like a mirror held to heaven. Voices in earpiece, low, tense. 2 left ridge, 1 roof. Thermal shows movement inside main structure. She remembered responding with clipped calm. Copy on me. Back then, her voice held command like it was her heartbeat. Another memory hit, fast flashes of movement, silent shapes sliding between pine shadows. Trust at her back. Trust so solid she'd stake her life on it without thinking. The team. Her team. Their presence had once been armor. 6 hearts breathing the same rhythm. 6 shadows moving as one. Now she only remembered fragments, gloved hands signaling, snow kicking from boots, breath frosting like smoke over quiet death. And then, screams. 1 gunshot too close. The thump of a body hitting ice. Not training beeps. Not simulation signals. Real. Hot. Final. A hand grabbing her gear strap, voice weak, urgent braking. Kestrel go. Her throat constricted, breath squeezed. The forest flickered into snow. Rain flickered into blood steam, rising in cold air. The present blurred under weight of remembrance. She blinked once hard. The vision stayed a second too long. Her teammates' faces lost in mist, but she knew each name like scars under ribs. Names nobody here would ever know. Names she never spoke aloud. Her fault. No. Yes. Both. Neither. Survival had a cost. Silence was interest piling up. She pressed her palm against a tree trunk, grounding herself, bark rough, real here, now. Inhale. Exhale. She whispered to herself, barely audible, not here, not again. But ghosts don't listen. Movement ahead, real, not memory. Not heavy boots. Lighter. Careful. Miller. He emerged from brush slowly, looking like someone rearranged by fear and admiration in equal measure. He froze when he saw her, eyes widened like he expected a phantom, not a person. You move like, he stopped, reset. I've been trying to track you for 2 hours. A flicker of humor almost surfaced, then stopped trying. He didn't smile, he wasn't here for jokes. He was studying her with dawning comprehension, not certainty, but suspicion turning into belief. Who are you really? The question was air-thin, fragile, but it hit heavy. Anna looked away first, because truth wasn't ready, and she wasn't sure she wanted it to be. Just trying to pass this course, she murmured. Don't lie to me. It wasn't accusation, it was plea. Not for gossip. For understanding. He sat beside her again, uninvited, but not unwanted. You think you're hiding, he said quietly, but you move like someone who learned how not to die a very long time ago. Silence leaned between them, not soft, not sharp, a truth waiting to breathe. Finally she whispered, everyone has something they don't talk about. He swallowed, and yours scares you. Her jaw tightened. What happened to you, he asked gently, before this place? She didn't answer, couldn't. Instead, her fingers curled unconsciously, muscle memory, forming a trigger shape that no longer needed a rifle to exist. Miller watched the motion. Recognition dawned. Respect, fear, empathy all mixing. You weren't always here, he said slowly. And someone didn't want you to come back. She looked at him sharply, instinct flaring, but he didn't flinch. He didn't retreat. He held her gaze. They were wrong, he whispered. Her breath hitched. That sentence, so simple, felt like someone pressing a warm hand on a wound she'd been pretending wasn't bleeding. Before she could respond, a branch snapped somewhere distant, survival slicing through introspection instantly. Their heads turned together. Rays. Still hunting. Still unraveling. Miller exhaled shakily. They think you're hiding from them. Anna stood. Calm reshaped her limbs. Purpose settled on her shoulders like a forgotten mantle returning to its rightful place. I'm not hiding, she said quietly. He stared at her profile, something fierce and resigned now sharpening her silhouette. Then what are you doing? She didn't look back. Trying not to become who I used to be. She moved into the trees again, softer, faster, more certain than before. Not because she wanted to fight, but because something inside had shifted. A door she kept locked was open just an inch. And the past was peering through. Only one thing was more dangerous than a hunter. A hunter trying not to hunt. People think survival is instinct. They forget sometimes it's memory. And memory can be the sharpest blade of all. When did running stop being escape and start being gravity? By the fourth sunrise, the Blackwood felt less like terrain and more like confession. Dew clung to the world like regret, mist drifting between trees like memory you didn't give permission to follow you, but it followed anyway. Anna stood at the edge of a ravine, knuckles white on her pack straps. Not from cold. Not from fear. From restraint. Because inside her ribcage, where she once buried a name and a life, something was waking with claws. Not violence, no. Violence was easy. Violence was a reflex, a muscle twitch, an instinct. This was harder. This was identity pushing against bone. She brushed fingertips across her collarbone, a habit she didn't realize she still had. It wasn't a nervous gesture. It was remembering where a patch once sat. Black. Silent, meaning heavier than rank or ribbons. But here she had no patch, no title, no team, just breath, just effort, just ghosts. She had thought coming here would quiet the past. Instead, the forest amplified it. Below water cut stone, the sound of persistence wearing down strength. She knelt, splashing her face, letting cold bite her awake. She didn't hear footsteps behind her. She felt them, pressure in the air, displaced weight, breath coated with ego turned anxious. Raise. His silhouette appeared through fog like anger given shape. His uniform was smeared with mud, face drawn, eyes hollowed by sleepless hours and swallowed pride. You, he breathed, not accusation, not anymore, but disbelief frayed with obsession. How are you still out here? She didn't answer. Some questions aren't for answers, they're for realization. Rays eased down the muddy slope toward her, boots skidding slightly. Jax trailed behind him, exhausted, shaking from cold and humiliation and something worse, respect he didn't want to feel. We're finishing this, Rays muttered, voice low and trembling. I don't care if they cancel the exercise, His foot slipped. Anna moved on instinct, hand darting out, grabbing his wrist, steadying him before he crashed into the ravine. Rays froze. Her touch was controlled, bone-sure, not reflexively helpful, reflexively precise. Not how recruits move. Not how hopeful soldiers react. How operators survive. His eyes widened as he felt the grip, measured, confident, not strength from muscle, but from memory of stakes higher than simulation. She let go immediately, stepping back like she'd touched fire. Or been discovered. Ray's voice was soft, cracked. Who are you? She looked away. Just someone trying to finish the course. That's bullshit. No swagger now, no mockery. Just confusion that bordered on fear. Normal soldiers don't move like that. Normal soldiers don't survive alone in terrain that eats confidence for breakfast. Normal soldiers don't vanish and appear like mist. Before she could respond, comms crackled on Ray's shoulder, static breaking silence like a thrown glass. Croft's voice came through, coarse and urgent. All units hold positions. Fog is thick, don't. Static. Be advised, we have live element movements on perimeter. Civilians suspected. Static. Do not engage, find secure ground, monitor only. Jack stiffened, civilians here. Rays lifted his radio, tried answering, only static replied. They stood suspended, three silhouettes in a wet gray world suddenly altered. The exercise had been their universe. Now reality nudged the boundary. And reality had teeth. Rays tried again, but his voice wavered. Copy, Sergeant Major. More static. Silence settled heavy. Anna exhaled slowly. You should move. And you, he asked. She didn't answer. There are moments when past and present collide. Moments when identity stops hiding and simply stands up because danger doesn't care if you're trying to be someone else. The fog around them thickened. Sounds seemed to draw closer, not louder but sharper. A branch break too clean to be wind, the hush of steps that knew how to breathe. Something or someone was near. Not part of training. Not controlled. Not safe. Ray's hand hovered near his weapon reflexively. Wrong reflex. Too visible, too emotional. Anna didn't reach for her weapon. Her posture shifted, weight lowered, breath slowed, senses widening like a lens refocusing. No panic, no hesitation. She wasn't returning to who she was. She never left. Her voice came out quiet, steady, old. Find higher ground, slow movement, no straight lines, watch wind. Rays blinked. Jack stared. Not because of her words, but because of the way she said them. Orders that weren't requests. Instinct that wasn't learned here. Calm that only comes after real chaos, not practice chaos. Rays whispered, "What were you?" Her jaw tightened. Not yet. Not here. Another snap of brush, too close, deliberate. Jax flinched. Rays swallowed. Anna's gaze sharpened. Three shapes emerged through fog, not predators, not military hikers. Lost, confused, unaware of the tension stretched thin around them. A teenager waved awkwardly. Hey, are we near the ranger station? We took the wrong trail and—" Ray's nearly laughed, relief desperate and sloppy. Jax sagged like fear drained out his boots. Anna didn't relax. The father lifted his hand casually, jacket shifting. There, a bulge under his arm. Not a water bottle, not survival gear. Holstered. Concealed. Wrong for a hiker. Her blood chilled, not fear, calculation. And his stance too balanced, too watchful, his eyes scanning terrain before speaking. Not lost. Not civilian. Rays didn't see it. Jax didn't see it. They saw relief. She saw something else. Threat. The man smiled too politely. Didn't mean to surprise you. Anna's reply was soft, automatic. Hands where we can see them. Rays shot her a look. What are you? The man moved small, subtle. Anna moved faster, stepping between Rays and danger without thinking, body angled to shield, hand lifted not in panic, but command. Stop. Her voice wasn't recruit soft now. It was steel, a voice that expected obedience. The man paused, eyes narrowed, not at her threat but at recognition, not who she was but what she was. Rays went pale, Jax's breath hitched. They suddenly saw it too, posture, awareness, readiness the forest didn't teach in 3 days. The teenager didn't see anything, he just looked confused. The man slowly raised his hands. Relax, you military kids are jumpy. Military kids. Not wrong. Not accurate. Anna stepped closer, 1 inch at a time. Lift your jacket slowly. He did. The gun gleamed. Shock punched Rays. Jax almost fell backward. The man shrugged. Protection bears crazy world. Anna's eyes stayed locked on him. Protection doesn't sit forward in a holster for fast draw. Protection doesn't adopt combat stance unconsciously. Protection doesn't scan escape routes before speaking. This wasn't random. He wasn't lost. Something bigger hovered at edges of the woods. Danger real enough that she felt old instincts latch onto her spine. Rays whispered, "How did you?" She didn't look back, move. But now he moved. Not because she asked. Because command leaves no space for doubt. Jax followed, shaking but alive because she existed. The man watched her. Measured her. Did not test her. He didn't fear soldiers. He feared predators. She held his gaze 1 second longer, long enough to send a message without speaking. Don't. He didn't. Because she wasn't a recruit arguing with ego. She was something else staring back at him, something that recognized him, not personally but by type. Danger that once lived in shadows learning to breathe again. She turned and followed Rays and Jax up the ridge, breath steady but soul shaking. Rays finally found his voice, thin and stunned. You're not supposed to be here, are you? Anna didn't answer. Some truths arrive not in confession, but in silence heavy enough to reveal everything. She didn't want to be this again. But survival, real survival, didn't ask permission. Some secrets aren't uncovered. They resurface when danger calls their real name. And danger had just whispered hers. What breaks first, the lie you live in or the truth you refuse to touch? By midday, sunlight fought through the fog like it wanted to save someone. It found Anna first, tracing her cheek, warming cold skin. But light didn't comfort her. It exposed her. She walked ahead of Rays and Jax, not leading by choice, but because instinct pulled her forward and they followed like gravity had shifted around her. They whispered occasionally, voices hushed, unsure whether to be afraid or relieved. She heard Rays murmur, "She saw him before I did." Jax whispered back, She felt him before anyone did. Their shock was still raw, shaky, trying to reshape the world into something that made sense again. Anna didn't turn. She didn't want to hear respect. Respect led to recognition. Recognition led to remembering. And remembering hurt more than isolation ever could. Leaves brushed her uniform, sunlight flickering across her face in broken beams. The forest buzzed, birds, insects, wind threading through pine needles, life unbothered by human ghosts. She hated how effortless her awareness felt now, how natural it was to scan high ground, note sound direction, memorize exits. She hadn't wanted this to return. She came to bury it. And yet here it was, not rusted, not faded. Sharp, alive, unavoidable. They reached a clearing, grass pressed flat in a wide circle, earth disturbed. Not training disturbance, something heavier, more deliberate. Ray stiffened. This wasn't here yesterday. Anna crouched, fingers grazing soil. Tracks, multiple. Boot treads unfamiliar, patterns tight. Someone moved efficiently, unloading weight quietly. No hesitation marks, no wasted steps. Not hikers. Not soldiers from camp. Different rhythms, different purpose. Jack swallowed. What do you think? Silence, she said softly. Not to command, but because silence was the only safe language here. Rays bristled for half a second, the last flicker of ego struggling to breathe, then extinguished. He lowered his head and stayed quiet. Anna listened. Wind. Distant branch sway. A rhythm beneath like breathing through earth. No, not breathing, movement. Then a sound she wished she didn't recognize, the faint click of metal settling into position. Far away but precise. Fragile to untrained ears, razor-sharp to hers. A scope. Adjusting elevation. Her chest tightened. Not training, not accident. This was real. She stood slow, smooth, angling her body slightly. Minimal target profile. Breaths measured, pulse almost too calm. Rays watched her, fear returning not of her, but of whatever she understood that he didn't. Anna, he whispered, what is it? Danger, she murmured, but not for us yet. Her voice carried weight that didn't belong to a trainee. It belonged to someone who had once been listened to without hesitation. Someone with experience measured in lives saved and lost, not hours trained. Jax's voice cracked. How do you know? She didn't answer, not yet. Explaining wouldn't help. It would change everything too fast. Rays shook his head slowly. We need to contact command. Signal dead this deep, Anna reminded him. They engineered dead zones for realism. Realism. Funny word now. She walked toward tree line, every footstep whisper light, shoulders loose but ready. The forest felt different, not hostile, not welcoming, just aware, as if it remembered her the way she remembered it. Rays followed, unable not to. Jax trailed close, breath uneven. Why aren't you scared? Jax asked quietly. She paused. A breeze brushed her cheek, pine, earth, memory. She exhaled. I've been scared before, she said softly. I know what it does. Fear kept me alive, but panic kills. I don't panic anymore. Ray stared. There it was again. That tone, that truth they kept bumping into like furniture in the dark. You talk like someone who's been in real fights, he murmured. She didn't deny it. They moved deeper until brush thickened and sound thinned. Birds quieted suddenly. The forest held its breath. Then faint, sharp, unmistakable, the pop of suppressed fire somewhere miles out. Not close enough to hit them. Close enough to confirm everything she feared. Rays jumped. Jax froze. You heard that right, Jax whispered, desperate for validation. Yes, Anna replied flatly. Rays looked at her like she held the only flashlight in a collapsing cave. What is going on? Who the hell are you? He didn't say it with anger this time. He said it like a man drowning asking where the surface went. Anna closed her eyes for a second. She hadn't wanted this moment. She had hoped, begged internally to stay small, stay unseen, stay normal. To be someone whose silence meant shyness, not containment. But truth had a way of cornering you, not asking politely to be invited. Footsteps approached, light, cautious, circling, not towards them, probing perimeter elsewhere. Whoever they weren't leaving. They were setting something up. Anna finally spoke. "My name is Anna Sharma." Ray's waited, breath held, expecting more. Nothing came. "That's it," he whispered, frustration sharp. She opened her eyes. "Names don't tell truth." Jax shook his head. "You said something to that guy before he saw the gun, you said." Ray's finished for him, hands where we can see them. They both looked at her, like the forest had peeled her mask off, and she was no longer a stranger but a question they needed answered to breathe correctly. Anna's fingers flexed slightly, memory gripping her own bones. "Before this," she said slowly, "I was part of something I don't speak about." Ray's leaned forward. "Special forces." She didn't speak. Jax's voice lowered, awed, terrified. "Tier 1. Silence." Which was answer enough. Their eyes widened, but she lifted a hand. "Don't say it like it's heroic." "Why not?" Ray's whispered. "It is." Her mouth tightened, pain flickering across her face so raw it silenced them. She didn't hide it fast enough. "People died," she murmured. "People I led, people who trusted me, and I lived. Sometimes that is an accomplishment." Ray stared, breath shallow. Jax's eyes glistened, not with tears, with something like grief borrowed from hers. Miller stepped through brush suddenly, stumbling into the tension. He blinked, took in their faces. "What happened?" Ray spoke, voice small. "She wasn't running from us." Miller met Anna's eyes. "You were running from yourself." Anna looked away, because truth hurts least when you don't look at it directly. A crack of foliage deeper in woods, sharper this time, closer, not hikers, not animals, strategic approach pattern. Her senses sharpened. Not fear, preparation. Miller saw her posture shift. "What now?" Anna inhaled. "Now," she whispered, "I stop pretending I don't know how to do this." Ray swallowed. "Do what?" Her voice was barely breath. "Not pride, not ego. Resignation. Protect the people near me." She glanced at them. 3 men who once dismissed her, now looking at her like anchor, shield, truth they weren't ready for but needed. "Stay behind me," she said. Not shouted. Not ordered. Stated as fact, the way physics states that gravity pulls and fire burns. Miller nodded without hesitation. Jax followed, trusting without understanding. Ray's hesitated, then gave in. Pride finally surrendered to survival. Anna stared into the woods, heartbeat slow, controlled. Purpose settling like old weight on shoulders she once thought would never carry it again. She whispered to no one, or maybe to ghosts. "I didn't want to return, but I won't run from this. Because sometimes life doesn't care if you're done with your past. Sometimes it calls your real name." And she could almost hear it again, low in wind, buried in memory. Kestrel. Not accusation. Not glory. A summons. She straightened slowly. Some people become warriors by choice. Others become warriors because life refused to let them be anything else. And she was tired of refusing truth that already lived in her bones. The forest didn't feel like a test anymore. It felt like a battleground waking up. And she wasn't hiding in it this time. She was stepping into it, one breath, one ghost, one truth at a time. When the world finally sees you, do you stand taller or wish you could disappear again? The forest held its breath. No wind. No birdsong. Even the leaves seemed to pause mid-flutter, as if nature itself sensed something crossing into its territory that didn't belong. Anna stood at the front, shoulders still, lungs controlled, every thread of awareness stretched out like invisible wire touching the edges of Earth. Not tension, precision. Focus sharpened to a point honed long before any classroom or training field existed in her life. Behind her, three men who once doubted her now shifted nervously, trusting her without understanding why trust came so easy now. Trust born not from rank or words, but presence. Presence that could not be faked, not learned in weeks, not earned through theory. It came from surviving the parts of the world built to erase you. Ray's whispered, "What do we do?" She didn't look back, listen, watch, breathe. They obeyed, not because she commanded, but because their bodies responded to her tone before their minds even formed agreement. In the distance, a low crack, not a twig under deer weight, not clumsy boot fall. Intentional, testing terrain, someone moving like she moved, or tried to. She exhaled slowly. 100 meters northeast, 2 sets of feet, light, experienced. Miller wet his lips. "Are we in danger?" "Yes," she said softly, "but not if we stay calm." Rays inhaled shakily, then whispered, "Why us? Why here?" Anna's eyes narrowed, scanning treeline. Danger doesn't need reasons, only opportunity. Another sound, soft brush contact against tactical fabric. She could almost map their path without seeing them. Their approach wasn't to attack, it was to observe, pin, decide later. Professionals. Her chest tightened. This forest, this selection trial, it was never just training. The world had fault lines beneath every quiet space, and sometimes the cracks opened where you least expected them. And sometimes life put you where you're needed before you realized why you came. She lowered herself slightly, hand extended gently behind her without turning, not a command gesture, but a boundary. "Stay behind, stay quiet, stay alive." Jack's whispered, voice trembling, "Are they after us?" She considered. No. They weren't hunting alpha candidates. They were using the terrain, moving through real-world patterns, wrong region, wrong gear, wrong attitude for lost campers. Different mission entirely. But they spotted trainees. And when wolves cross a path they didn't expect, they don't ignore, they evaluate. Rays looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear. "You knew this could happen." "No," she murmured, "I hoped it wouldn't." The honesty shook him more than bravado ever could. The crunch of footsteps shifted direction, veering away instead of closer. What felt like a threat ready to swallow them dissolved into shadow, drifting into deeper woods. Not retreat, relocation. Anna listened until sound faded into distance. Miller whispered, "We're safe." "No," she said, "not from memory." They didn't understand, not fully, but they heard something in her voice that silenced questions. Silence stretched, long, heavy, but not suffocating. Finally, Jax exhaled shakily. "What now?" "We go back." Simple, not dramatic, not heroic. Rays blinked. "We retreat." "We complete the selection," she replied. "We finish what we came here to do." Rays stared at her, realizing now the depth of difference. He wanted to prove he belonged. She wanted to prove she could exist without war. Different battles. Same ground. He nodded slowly, "Okay." And for the first time since she arrived, there was no mockery in his eyes. No pride, just respect. Raw, stripped, earned by silence and survival, not force or arrogance. Miller stepped closer, voice soft. "Anna, earlier you said people died, people under you." Her breath caught. The wound inside her shifted like scar tissue being touched for the first time in too long. She nodded once. He swallowed. "You think surviving makes you guilty." Her jaw clenched. "Sometimes it does." "Sometimes," he whispered, "it makes you responsible to live." Her eyes flicked to him, sharp, surprised, softened by an ache she didn't ask for. hope and regret threading through one breath. Jax looked between them, quiet. Reyes lowered his gaze, the kind of humility that only comes when truth humbles you, not defeat. Anna inhaled slowly, letting mountain air fill a chest long clenched. The forest smelled of pine, damp earth, possibility, not danger now but release. She turned toward the long way back. Let's move. The return trek wasn't triumph. It wasn't surrender either. It was acceptance. They walked in silence, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was shared, human, honest. Ray stumbled once, tired legs giving out. Anna caught him without thinking. He didn't snap or crack a joke. He simply steadied himself, nodded once at her, and kept moving. Jax tapped her shoulder at one point, voice hushed. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you were out here." She didn't reply, but she let the words exist. Miller stayed close, not protective, not afraid, just present. Not because she needed someone, but because sometimes people choose to stand near strength that's quiet, not loud. They emerged from forest line hours later, mud-covered, exhausted, changed. Instructors waited, faces stern, until they saw the four of them moving together, not scattered, not broken. One of them frowned. "We activated a retrieval signal, we thought." "We weren't lost," Anna said gently. Silence fell. Ray stepped forward, voice steady but emotional. "She kept us alive." Jax nodded, not theatrically, simply truth. Miller looked the instructor dead in the eye. "If she doesn't pass this course, none of us deserve to." The instructor studied Anna, too long, too curious. "You weren't recommended from any special program. No prior unit record." Anna held his stare without fear or explanation. "Everyone has a beginning." "And some," Miller murmured beside her, "are just finding theirs again." The instructor stared 1 second longer, then nodded. "You all passed this phase." Reyes exhaled like he'd been underwater. Jax slumped in relief. Anna simply nodded once, quiet. Because passing wasn't victory. Finishing wasn't triumph. Surviving without becoming her past, that was the mission. And she was still walking it. Later, as evening fell and camp lights flickered like fireflies trying to fight dusk, Miller found her sitting alone under pines. Knees drawn up, shoulders relaxed for the first time in days. He sat beside her, nothing forced. "You okay?" She thought a long moment. Not about danger, not about ghosts, but about breathing, about being seen but not exposed, about being known but not caged by identity. "I'm still here," she said finally. He nodded. "Sometimes that's the victory." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. He hesitated. "The name they called you once, you don't have to say it, but if you ever want someone to hear it who won't turn it into legend or weapon, I'm here." Her throat tightened, not from pain, from relief she didn't expect. Names weren't what mattered. Being allowed to be human again, that mattered. "Thank you," she whispered. Night deepened. Stars dusted sky in quiet witness, and Anna sat there still, calm, whole, not because she fought, but because she chose peace where others saw war. Some wars are loud. Some wars never fire a bullet. Some wars end when a person stops running from who they were and starts walking toward who they want to be. And sometimes dignity doesn't stand tall. Sometimes it sits quietly under pine needles and breathes. Because strength isn't the noise you make. It's the noise you refuse to answer. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Quietly, steadily, and survives the world without letting it turn you back into who you escaped from. She hadn't returned. She had rebuilt. And this time she survived as not a ghost, but a person.